So one of the key concepts that we talked about earlier is the idea that 95% of the time events will happen within this window, and that's really from the mean in the center plus or minus 2 standard deviation. So as you go up in the plus direction, 1, 2 standard deviations, that's the upper boundary for that 95%, and minus 2 standard deviations is the lower boundary. Minus 1, minus 2. Well, that leaves out here in the tail 2.5% down here, 2.5% here. So when you start to find things, values that fall outside of this boundary, down in this 2.5% area, we're in the unusual area. If you remember the golf example we did in chapter 4, it would be unusual for me to hit a drive. Let's see, my average is 180, standard deviation was 10, so 190, 200. Be unusual for me to hit a drive over 200 yards. And unusual for me to hit a drive, if this is 180, 170, 160, less than 160 yards. Well, that's continuous data, measurement data that has a continuous aspect to it of how refined we can get. And this week we're going to talk about probability distributions for discrete data. And I'll go into some examples for that. Let's go with a little bit of background for this discrete type of data, which is more count data, go, no-go types of data. On slide 2, we're going to title this kind of data a binomial probability distribution. And binomial simply means it exists or it doesn't exist. It's go, no-go kinds of information. So there are some background definitions for that. It has a fixed number of trials or events. The trials are independent. One event doesn't influence the next one. And each trial has classified into 2 categories, which I just talked about, success or failure, or go, no-go. And the probability of success, or the underlying probability, stays the same from trial to trial, and it's consistent likelihood of the event happening. Now we need to define a couple of terms, discrete and continuous again. We talked about continuous being the type of data that you can measure precisely. On slide 3, there's a few examples of, or a definition of that. Continuous random variable, infinitely many values can be calculated, or can be measured. So I could have measured yards, feet, inches, tenths of an inch, hundredths of an inch, thousandths of an inch for my drives, depending on how precise I wanted to make it. But a discrete random variable has a finite number of values, either the number of strokes that I take playing golf would be a discrete kind of value, where countable refers to the fact that there might be infinitely many values, but they result from a counting process. And believe me, I've been on the golf course where there's infinitely many values. So I knew I was in trouble as an athlete when my golf score and my bowling score crossed over. My golf score exceeded my bowling score, so I went into statistics immediately. So I find that joke amusing. Definitions, discrete random variable. On slide 4, you'll see some specific examples. The number of sales in a given day. People walk in and out of the store. Did they buy something or didn't they buy something? You're counting up sales. The number of crimes in a month. Up in Rochester, they're totaling up the total number of violent crimes in a given month, and they're making a big effort to reduce that. The number of patients admitted in a day. In a hospital emergency room, the flow of patients coming in and out, counting the number of patients would be discrete. Continuous variable or continuous measurements that would relate to that would be, okay, there's the number of sales, but the amount of sales in dollar value would be more of a continuous value. And you can get down to the pennies, but you can even round it, or you can even measure that more precisely if you wanted to get into the value of the dollar that given day. The time from a crime committed to a crime reported would be a continuous value. In the process time to admit a patient, you might have a certain number of patients discrete that enter as a discrete measurement, but how long does it take us to go from when they step through the door to actually getting them admitted into the emergency room area? So we'll take a little break, and then I'll come back with some more work on binomial distributions and how we can use this usual versus unusual values that we see as we move away from the mean.